found a penny. Anybody find a penny? Yeah, they're still around. Keep your eyes open. So I found a penny from last week that reminded me to trust God. And so that was our practice this past week, right? Anytime that we were spending any money, whether by check, credit card, cash, that we paused for a moment and breathed and remember that we are trusting in God and that we are grateful that we have what we need to pay this electric bill or buy these groceries or whatever the case may be. So how many of you took on that practice this week? I see a few hands. So I have all the faith in the world that somebody who had that practice and took that on will have something to share this morning about what that was about for you. What did you learn from that? What was the new insight or understanding? So raise your hand high if you'd like to share. I see a hand. Shannon.
I was particularly remembering like when it was like lunchtime or whatever and I was going to buy like food. It like just wasn't currency. It was like nourishing my body.
Yes.
And to mindfully eat it, where it came from and everything. So
beautiful, because abundance is health, it's relationships, it's creativity, it's work, it's money, it's all of it. So taking the time to just recognize that right now, I'm so grateful I get to nourish my body. Fabulous practice. Who else? Anybody else? Okay, Marilyn. What is your great insight this week, Marilyn?
Well, good morning, and thank
morning.
you, Reverend Joanne. Some of the ways that I practiced this was whenever I was giving a donation, I gave the money a kiss, and I blessed it. And the realization that, wow, just the prosperity of God in having lots of electricity and having the beautiful things that we have in community here, that was really nice. That I do, when I'm giving a donation of money, I receive such beautiful things. And I'm doing a Gourmets for God on April 18th. And it's really was a very expensive thing that I'm putting together, and I was really hesitant, and then I was just like, hey, this is a God thing. I'm going to send it out, and I'm going to bless it, and he's going to bless us back, and it's going to be beautiful, and 50 to 75 of you can come, so I hope you will.
Thank you, Marilyn. That was fabulous. Today, thank you, Elizabeth. So plug, Gourmets for God. Last sign-up day to put in your event host form. We have 5 of them so far, and we're seeing 6. So one of you out there is going to take this on today, I know. So we are moving on today to this idea of where does evil fit in, right? So I'm going to start today with a reading from Emily Cady. So Emily Cady, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, our co-founders, invited Emily Cady to write our very first textbook. And that textbook is called Lessons in Truth. And this is how Emily Cady begins that particular book. She says this is under chapter 1, lesson 1, bondage or liberty, which, she says, in entering upon this course of instruction, each of you should, so far as possible, lay aside for the time being all previous theories and beliefs. By so doing, you will be saved the trouble of trying all the way through the course to put new wine into old wineskins. If there is anything as we proceed which you do not understand or agree with, just let it lie passively in your mind until you have read the entire book, for many statements that would at first arouse antagonism and discussion will be clear and easily accepted a little further on. After the course is completed, if you wish to return to your old beliefs and ways of living, you are at perfect liberty to do so. But for the time being, be willing to become as a little child. For said the Master in spiritual things, except ye become as little children, ye shall in no wise enter into the kingdom of heaven. So I'm starting my message today with this idea that if you are hearing anything that is out of agreement or alignment with your belief system or BS, took a minute, that you'll just set it aside. Set it aside. Don't argue it in your mind or try to weasel out of taking in this idea, just let it sit with you. And I promise you, if when you leave this room you want to pick it back up again, you are more than free to do so. But for now, let's open our mind to the ideas of where does evil fit in this world? So I want you to stand up if you see evil out in the world, out in our humanity. Do you see it? Stand up if you do. And if you don't, you can stay sitting, but if you do, I'm inviting you to stand up. And I want you to look around the room because a lot of people see it, right? And so I want you to share what it is that you see. And here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to stay standing until somebody says what you see in the world as evil. Then you can sit down with them, okay? So what do you see as evil out in the world? Ignorance. Hungry children. Anger. And again, if yours is mentioned, you can sit down. Anger. There was another one back there. Scamming. Politics. Intentional cruelty. Human trafficking. Domestic violence. Othering. Intolerance. Thoughts. Thoughts. Thank you, Christy. Fear. I think we already mentioned politics, so. Okay. Hatred. All right, you can sit too, Christy, unless you got another one you'd like to share. Thoughts is pretty broad and covers everything, right? So can we acknowledge that there is evil to be seen in the world? And that we see it through all of these things we've mentioned and lots of things that we didn't. The human condition of living with one another is filled with opportunities for us to be unjust to one another. Do we see that? So unity teaches that God is the only power and the only presence in my life and in the universe, and God is good and omnipotent. So why the heck doesn't God come and take care of all of this evil in the world? I read a quote by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm going to paraphrase because I didn't actually write it down. That said something like this: expecting God to come and take care of the evil in the world is superstition. Whew. Come on, God. And so we see evil. We can acknowledge that there is evil in the world, and yet at the same time, we're also looking at this idea that God is the only power and the only presence, and God is good in unity. So I want to share with you another quote, this one coming from truthunity.net, that was written by Mark Hicks, who is a Unity minister and takes care of that website. And this is what he says: as said above, unity teaches from a perspective of one power, one presence, God omnipotent, all good. This is our belief. This is our absolute knowing. But what that means in practical terms is that no condition and no tragedy, from the common cold to unspeakable abomination, is outside the realm of God to be transformed into greater good. When we align with God and apply our Christ-like nature to the condition. Okay, so where does the responsibility lie? With us, right? But listen, it's not just us. So on this end, we've got everybody waiting, please, God, come and help us, save us. Superstition. And on this side, we have humanity, need to take care of this. And that is also getting us off track because you cannot legislate yourself out of evil. It continues to happen. And so what I'd like to suggest to you today is that both of these sides, God and us, come together into you and I as that divine expression of God and become aware of where am I adding to the conditions in this world that create this evil, and how can I change my mind and show up instead as the good that is God that wants to be revealed in, through, and as me. In unity, evil is an illusion in the way that it cannot exist unless we keep it alive. So when you hear this idea in unity that evil is an illusion, it doesn't mean we don't see it. It just means it's not real, that we keep it alive through our thoughts and our words and our actions. So how many of you remember or have seen, those monkeys? See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, right? And I've been thinking about that this week because I've been thinking about unity and what I've heard in unity throughout my years of being involved in unity. And some people in unity think that we should see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. That we could just ignore it. Just ignore it. Don't give any power to it. Ignore it. Pretend it's not there. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And what I want to suggest to you is that is not what we are called to do. So how many of you were here on Friday night to see St. Francis, right? Yeah, it was a really powerful evening in which James Twyman shared the story of St. Francis. And so on Friday afternoon, I said to my husband, Gary, who really isn't into a lot of this sort of stuff, I said, why don't you come with me and come and see this show of James Twyman doing St. Francis? And he just kind of took a breath and said, well, as long as we don't have to look at one another and sing Kumbaya. Those of you who were here Friday night know that there came a point in the program where James Twyman said, turn to someone sitting next to you, look them in the eye, and sing this song of peace. And I looked at Gary and I said, really, I didn't know we would be doing this. But anyways, the evening really spoke to Gary. He really got something out of the evening and the story of St. Francis. And so yesterday I said to him, there's a movie that was made in the 70s about this story, Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. Would you like to watch it? And he said, yeah, I'd like to watch it. So we sat down to watch it together last night. And if any of you have seen the movie, you know that St. Francis, he spoke about things that the church wished he'd be quiet about, right? He saw the suffering in the world. He saw the people who were starving, hungry, without clothes, without shelter, without food, and he realized that he needed to take those words of Jesus seriously, to get rid of your things and come follow me. And he literally did that. Gave everything back to his Father here on earth and said, I am now going to walk with God and I'm going to serve. I'm just going to love everyone. And this is what he went about doing, and that started attracting the people in the community of Assisi to his church that he was rebuilding until eventually the church in Assisi was empty, but for the old people stuck in their old paradigm and way of seeing the world, which was to ignore the suffering. And he eventually had to go to Rome. And he talked to the people in Rome, right? The Pope at the time, I think, was Pope Innocent, and all of the bishops that were standing there. And he came in and he began to quote Jesus. I say to you, love one another. Sell your possessions. Come follow me. Visit the poor. Visit the homeless. Visit the prisoner. Feed the hungry. And he was really speaking out to the church about their hypocrisy, that they were able to ignore what was happening in the world and in the society around them. He was calling them to pay attention and show up as love, which is what Jesus invited us to do. I was also this weekend watching a documentary on PBS called Backs Against the Wall, and it's the Howard Thurman story. And Howard Thurman was a mystic, theologian, civil rights activist. And he was sharing about how these same ideas that got hold of him, how he needed to speak those out. Because what he was saying was he would go to church on Sunday morning and speak to this community, and that afternoon they would head out those doors and head for a lynching. Talk about a disconnect. And we can all in shock go, oh my goodness. But what is it for you if it's not a lynching? Where is it for you where your ideas, your thoughts, your words, your actions are out of alignment with the truth? I'm thinking back, Gary reminded me of this a couple of days ago. I'm thinking back to when I first started doing this work, and somebody told me that, they weren't going to attend anymore because I gave a milquetoast sermon. Now, a milquetoast, you might recall, is like a piece of toast dipped in milk, given to a child so they can easily digest it. It doesn't stretch the digestive system in any way. It's easy to take in. And I think I've come a long way from giving a milquetoast sermon. Because I want you and I to feel that uncomfortable of knowing that there is something for us to do. When we look out in the world and see where what we say we believe, God is the only power, God is the only presence, we are here to love one another, care for one another, understand one another, where we can then pay attention to where is my life out of alignment with those ideas. I found another quote. I thought about this one and went and looked it up. This one I didn't realize it went back to the 1770s. Let me find this here. So 1770, Edmund Burke. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. That's you and I and each of us here. When we say, I'm going to ignore it and not speak about it and not address it because I don't want to give it any further power. That's a unity idea that I've heard out there. And it's not working. It requires each and every one of us to stand up and speak out. When we see things happening in the world that are not in alignment with those truths. And so, as a minister, I will tell you that I've watched myself change. Because I've seen those ministers who came before me, who made a difference, like Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King, like Howard Thurman, spiritual leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, who speak the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it makes the people to hear that truth. Because if you and I want to eliminate the evil that we see in the world, it begins within ourselves. Where do I other? Where do I separate? Where do I cling to what I have rather than opening my hands in generosity? Where do I speak about others in a way that is not uplifting and inspiring, but condemning and judgmental? Where do I share things, for example, on social media that are based more on rhetoric than truth because it gets an idea across that I'm aligned with? Where do I do this? Turn my back on people who are hungry, on people who look different than me, on people whose lives are different than mine. Where do I do this? Because I'll go back to that idea that was shared on Truth Unity. That what we are to do is to be that good that is God, that is expressing as us, so that that good that is God can be revealed here on the earth. We keep the other alive through the activity of our mind. So some of you who may come on Sunday, thank you for still being here, that may be thinking, why do we have to talk about these things on Sunday? I just want to come and be inspired. I just want to come and hear a good word. I just want to be uplifted. I just want to feel better when I leave here. I have given up those milquetoast sermons. The world doesn't need milquetoast. The world needs us, you and I, to take ownership and responsibility, to own who we are in truth, and to show up and shine our light courageously, honestly, openly, with humility, and to love one another, because that's the antidote. The antidote to the evil you see, no matter what you saw as evil in the world, the antidote is that you show up and be love. Whatever that looks like, for whatever is happening in your life in any given moment, we don't have to go looking for opportunities. Remember, we live in an abundant universe. We are constantly given opportunities to just show up and be love. And as you and I do that, we will overcome the evil that shows up in the world. Are you with me? Yes. All right. Oh boy, I have to practice. I have to practice all the time. So I'm guessing perhaps you do too. So our spiritual practice, and I'm going to add on to it a little bit, but our spiritual practice is this. So if we are to show up and be love, then what is very important is that we become aware of God here, now, within us and around us, right? It is God that is the power of love that will transform our lives and the world, right? So what is it that you do or how you be that you allow yourself to experience God in any moment? How do you return back to an awareness of God when you're caught up in these worldly things? What is it for you? Nature. Meditation.
Focus on the breath.
Focus on the breath. Give. Community.
Hand on heart.
And heart. Hand on heart. Right? So whatever it is for you, I want you to make a list. Because sometimes when we're in the heat of whatever it is that we're going through that is out of alignment with God, we can't even remember. But if you have it written down, like on a 3x5 card, and you carry that with you, you can just pull it out and go, oh yeah, I have to take a breath now. I remember. Right? So what is it? What is it for you? Make that list. And then as you journey through this week, become aware of whatever moves you away from an awareness of the presence of God. Where does fear arise? Where does separation come up? Lack, limitation, doubt, worry. Where is it that you forget that you are one with God? Because recognize it is in that moment that you are participating in the collective consciousness that allows those ideas to create the social injustices in our world. We heal our own individual mind, and in the process help heal the collective consciousness. So take a breath. Get out and look at the sunshine or the snow or the rain or whatever it is, right? Pray, meditate, be, whatever it is for you. Choose again. Find one way to become aware of God again. And then what I didn't put in here that I'm going to now tell you, then take action. Then take action. Take action from that place of love. Take action from that place of hope. Take action from that place of possibility. And in that way, together, we can overcome the evil in the world, and we can become that beacon of light that illuminates the kingdom of heaven here on earth. Who's with me? Yeah. All right. All right. We can do this, yes? Yes. Say that with me. We can do this. Yes. We can do this. We can do this. We can do this. We can do this. And so it is as we allow it to be. Thank you and God bless.